Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Ann Arbor. My name is Mark VanKempen, and I serve the congregation as the Director of Spiritual Growth and Development. I also have the privilege of being the lead advisor of our high school youth group, known as YRUU. Every year, we invite our high school youth to create a worship service. This year was the first time that I considered the possibility that they might say no. Between virtual school, digital friend groups, homebound stir craziness, and all that while moving through the typical perils of being 16, I was very unsure if they would willingly add to their plate, plan, write, film, and create a virtual church service. It is a testament to their regard for this opportunity that they said yes. So I'm here to ask you to do an important thing. I want you to join in to the powerful act of listening. Our youth have mighty voices, and when they choose to broadcast their voice for the world to hear, take notice. Listen. Our worship theme for April is Speak, and today we are going to examine its partner, Listen. In listening to those around us, we show clearly our regard for the inherent worth and dignity of every person. In doing that, we also need to recognize those who will be celebrating the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. This year, Ramadan begins April 12th or 13th and lasts 30 days. Ramadan is a time of spiritual discipline, of deep contemplation of one's relationship with God, and increased giving, charity, and generosity in your community. It is also a time of celebration, to be with one's family and friends. If you don't observe Ramadan, remember that many who do will be fasting from sunrise to sunset. And to anyone who is celebrating Ramadan, Ramadan Mubarak. I now invite you to join us as we say our chalice lighting words together, followed by the covenant of this congregation.
We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace.
The spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me?
I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. With all of our voices and all of our visions. With all of our voices and all of our visions. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you.
I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Hey.
Woo! Air 5.
Lay it out.
When we reach across the chasm, the one in the middle, the one which divides our beliefs, our opinions, our facts, the one which says what is wrong, what is right, what is in the middle of morality, when we say that we pour the milk before the cereal or call a mango an apple, each bit of fact falls to the nothingness over heated debates, over the boiling water. It doesn't grow in heat, it simply persists in continued hatred for another. Belief, opinion, fact. When that, instead of dying down, grows, when that needs a third point of view to turn down the heat, when that needs to understand that in order to not burn the apples or the mangoes, when we play tug of war across the chasm, it ends in tears, in spilled milk, without the cereal, because we didn't get a chance to grow, to question the mangoes or the apples. Their existence matters too. We can't leave the stove on forever, but we also can't leave it unused. Why are these mangoes apples? Why aren't the apples mangoes? So when we look across the other side of the chasm, a curious debate is better than a heated one. When we stir the cereal into the bowl of milk, or the milk into the bowl of cereal, it isn't a false thing, or a thing needed to change, but a thing to be questioned. Not believed, not changed, but questioned or explained. When we play the game of tug of war from across the chasm, at the end of the day, the rope is neither won nor lost. It is dropped, for no one joined either side. It wasn't a conversation, but a question.
There are things in this world that divide us. We can easily let the divide become a chasm, where the other side is too far off to be seen, or even to be understood. It takes effort to create middle ground between them. Now, we'd like to share with you a story about people who created middle ground together by talking and listening.
I was a blue-eyed, chubby-cheeked 5-year-old when I joined my family on the picket line for the first time. My mom made me leave my dolls in the minivan. I'd stand on a street corner in the heavy Kansas humidity, surrounded by a few dozen relatives, with my tiny fists clutching a sign that I couldn't read yet. Gays are worthy of death. This was the beginning. Our protest soon became a daily occurrence and an international phenomenon, and as a member of Westboro Baptist Church, I became a fixture on picket lines across the country. The end of my anti-gay picketing career, and life as I knew it, came 20 years later, triggered in part by strangers on Twitter who showed me the power of engaging the other. In my home, life was framed as an epic spiritual battle between good and evil. The good was my church and its members, and the evil was everyone else. And like the rest of my 10 siblings, I believed what I was taught with all my heart, and I pursued Westboro's agenda with a special sort of zeal. In 2009, that zeal brought me to Twitter. Initially, the people I encountered on the platform were just as hostile as I expected. They were the digital version of the screaming hordes I'd been seeing at protests since I was a kid. But in the midst of that digital brawl, a strange pattern developed. Someone would arrive at my profile with the usual rage and scorn. I would respond with a custom mix of Bible verses, pop culture references, and smiley faces. They would be understandably confused and caught off guard, but then a conversation would ensue. And it was civil, full of genuine curiosity on both sides. How had the other come to such outrageous conclusions about the world? Sometimes the conversation even bled into real life. People I'd sparred with on Twitter would come out to the picket line to see me when I protested in their city. A man named David was one such person. He ran a blog called Julicious, and after several months of heated but friendly arguments online, he came out to see me at a picket in New Orleans. He brought me a Middle Eastern dessert from Jerusalem, where he lives, and I brought him kosher chocolate and held a God Hates Jews sign. There was no confusion about our positions, but the line between friend and foe was becoming blurred. We'd started to see each other as human beings, and it changed the way we spoke to one another. It took time, but eventually these conversations planted seeds of doubt in me. My friends on Twitter took the time to understand Westboro's doctrines, and in doing so, they were able to find inconsistencies I'd missed my entire life. Why did we advocate the death penalty for gays when Jesus said, "Let he who is without sin cast the first stone"? How could we claim to love our neighbor while at the same time praying for God to destroy them? The truth is that the care shown to me by these strangers on the internet was itself a contradiction. It was growing evidence that people on the other side were not the demons I'd been led to believe. These realizations were life-altering. Once I saw that we were not the ultimate arbiters of divine truth, but flawed human beings, I couldn't pretend otherwise. I couldn't justify our actions, especially our cruel practice of protesting funerals and celebrating human tragedy. These shifts in my perspective contributed to a larger erosion of trust in my church, and eventually it made it impossible for me to stay. In spite of overwhelming grief and terror, I left Westboro in 2012. I spent my first year away from home, adrift with my younger sister, who had chosen to leave with me. We walked into an abyss, but we were shocked to find light and a way forward in the same communities we targeted for so long. David, my Julicious friend from Twitter, invited us to spend time among a Jewish community in Los Angeles. We slept on couches in the home of a Hasidic rabbi and his wife and their 4 kids. The same rabbi that I'd protested 3 years earlier with a sign that said, "Your rabbi is a whore." We spent long hours talking about theology and Judaism and life while we washed dishes in their kosher kitchen and chopped vegetables for dinner. They treated us like family. They held nothing against us. And again, I was astonished. That period was full of turmoil, but one part I've returned to often is a surprising realization I had during that time, that it was a relief and a privilege to let go of the harsh judgments that instinctively ran through my mind about nearly every person I saw. I realized that now I needed to learn. I needed to listen. This has been at the front of my mind lately because I can't help but see in our public discourse so many of the same destructive impulses that ruled my former church. We celebrate tolerance and diversity more than at any other time in memory, and still we grow more and more divided. We want good things: justice, equality, freedom, dignity, prosperity. But the path we've chosen looks so much like the one I walked away from 4 years ago. We've broken the world into us and them, only emerging from our bunkers long enough to lob rhetorical grenades at the other camp. We write off half the country as out-of-touch liberal elites or racist, misogynist bullies. No nuance, no complexity, no humanity. Even when someone does call for empathy and understanding for the other side, the conversation nearly always devolves into a debate about who deserves more empathy. And just as I learned to do, we routinely refuse to acknowledge the flaws in our positions or the merits in our opponents. Compromise is anathema. We even target people on our own side when they dare to question the party line. This path has brought us cruel sniping, deepening polarization, and even outbreaks of violence. I remember this path. It will not take us where we want to go. What gives me hope is that we can do something about this. The good news is that it's simple, and the bad news is that it's hard. We have to talk and listen to people we disagree with. It's hard because we often can't fathom how the other side came to their positions. It's hard because righteous indignation, that sense of certainty that ours is the right side, is so seductive. It's hard because it means extending empathy and compassion to people who show us hostility and contempt. The impulse to respond in kind is so tempting, but that isn't who we want to be. We can resist, and I will always be inspired to do so by those people I encountered on Twitter, apparent enemies who became my beloved friends. My friends on Twitter didn't abandon their beliefs or their principles, only their scorn. They channeled their infinitely justifiable offense and came to me with pointed questions tempered with kindness and humor. They approached me as a human being, and that was more transformative than 2 full decades of outrage, disdain, and violence. I know that some might not have the time or the energy or the patience for extensive engagement, but as difficult as it can be, reaching out to someone we disagree with is an option that is available to all of us. And I sincerely believe that we can do hard things, not just for them, but for us and our future. Escalating disgust and intractable conflict are not what we want for ourselves or our country or our next generation. Each one of us contributes to the communities and the cultures and the societies that we make up. The end of this spiral of rage and blame begins with one person who refuses to indulge these destructive, seductive impulses. We just have to decide that it's going to start with us. Thank you.
We all live 'neath the same Big Dipper. We're all washed by the very same rain. We're all swimming in the sea together, some in power and some in pain. We must worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. We all live 'neath the same Big Dipper. We're all washed by the very same rain. We're all swimming in the sea together, some in power and some in pain. We must worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. We all live 'neath the same Big Dipper. We're all washed by the very same rain. We're all swimming in the sea together, some in power and some in pain. We must worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side. We all live 'neath the same Big Dipper. We're all washed by the very same rain. We're all swimming in the sea together, some in power and some in pain. We must worship the ground we walk on, cherishing the beings that we live beside. Loving spirits will live forever. We're all swimming to the other side.
Hi, I'm Maya. I use she, her, hers, and they, them, theirs. I'm 17, and I've been coming to UUAA for 5 years. I'm going to share a little bit of what I know about allyship with you today. As a young queer person, I find it very important and helpful to have allies. I think that it is important for all marginalized communities. So I'm going to share some information to help you help people like me and other people in marginalized groups. What is allyship? What does it mean to be a good ally? Are you a good ally? Are you always one? What is the connection between talking to people with whom you disagree and allyship? They may seem quite different at first, and in some ways they are, but I think you'll find they both have to do with loving and caring for our society in different ways, and sometimes for different reasons. While talking to people with whom you disagree is important, it is always important to make a choice if you're trying to understand and empathize with them, or trying to stand up for justice. Talking and disagreeing about life, death, sports teams, and pizza toppings are very different conversations than those that impact human rights. When those rights are being violated, I believe it's absolutely vital that those topics are addressed in a different sort of way. Those things include race, class, gender, gender identity, sexuality, ability, religion, and as oppressed groups, their humanity is constantly seen as less than. So, what does it mean to be an ally? On the site Rochester Racial Justice Toolkit, created by Nicole Nafonium-Hara, allyship is described as the proactive, ongoing, and incredibly difficult practice of unlearning and reevaluating, in which a person of privilege works in solidarity and partnership with a marginalized group of people to take down the systems that challenge that group's basic rights, equal access, and ability to thrive in our society. Our society and education systems teach and ingrain in us a particular perspective. That perspective is often a singular and privileged one. What we need to remember is that our perspective is not universal. What is true for you is not always true for others. We're usually not taught the whole truth, and parts may not be true at all. That is why reevaluating your beliefs and opinions is a good idea. Why is it important to have allies in communities? Allies may provide support and help out by using privilege when they can. Allies may be able to reach a broader audience by having a voice in communities where marginalized people are sometimes shut out. Unfortunately, a group of white men is more likely to listen to someone they view as an equal than someone who has an agenda. Allies can reduce the burden on marginalized communities by spreading the work of advocacy and education over a larger group. Additionally, larger groups typically have more influence in societal opinions and, potentially, in the creation of laws. It has been shown that if you know people in a marginalized group, the less likely you are to discriminate against them. Having vocal and visible allies, therefore, decreases discrimination. Here's a few ideas about ways you can practice being an ally. Research, learn, educate yourself, and do self-reflection to look at and confront your own biases. And keep doing so. The world continues changing, so you must keep changing too, lest you become complicit. People will often become complicit by not having current knowledge about issues in our world. The systems in our society keep the benefits of your privilege hidden, and not acknowledging and confronting those things contributes to the problem. Listen. You'll learn so much from hearing stories and experiences of people who aren't like you. It's not your job to question, judge, or control the goals or strategies of marginalized communities. Let me say that again. It's not your job to question, judge, or control the goals or strategies of marginalized communities. Your job is to do the work that's asked of you by that community and to support and amplify the existing voices who get to decide and yet aren't necessarily being heard. That is what listening really is. Speak up and step in. Physically intervene when necessary. educate others who are privileged in the same way as you, so that those who are marginalized can spend their energy elsewhere. Any or all of these might be uncomfortable, especially at first, but that's okay. Sit in your discomfort and push through it to support others. We don't do any of this for praise or acknowledgement. We are only really being allies if our actions are motivated by supporting social justice. If we are doing these things because if we're doing them because they're the right thing to do for our friends, neighbors, family, and world. Well, the choices towards allyship are ours to make. The label isn't ours to claim, and instead is something the group in question can decide if we deserve. But being labeled an ally is not the important piece, and regardless of the title, it's the work that's important. This is why it's so important to have conversations about what would actually be helpful instead of using your own created agendas that would likely backfire on those we'd like to help. For instance, in the media lately, there has been a lot of performative or fake support. J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series, said in a tweet last June, "I know and love trans people, but," and goes on to actively erase experiences transgender folks have every day. The transgender community at large and lots of other people called her out on this, and yet she still believes herself to be a supporter when in actuality she's not believing the stories of real trans people. Another example of this is during the giant Black Lives Matter protests last summer. People were posting tons and tons of blackout squares, which didn't actually do anything except clog people's feeds. While it's important to voice support, doing so in this manner with the intention of getting recognized without doing any of the work or doing work communities aren't asking for is harmful and self-serving. As I'm wrapping up today, here's some thoughts to leave you with. Remember, allyship is proactive, ongoing, and incredibly difficult. It's about unlearning, reevaluating, supporting, listening, and doing what's asked. Life has challenges and is difficult to navigate, so standing up for each other's rights makes life a little easier for everyone. Lastly, to answer my previous question, are you always an ally? Well, of course not. We all make mistakes, and it's totally okay, as long as we take responsibility when screw-ups happen and learn from them to do better next time. I'll keep trying my best, and I hope you'll join me. Bye!
Our time together is coming to a close, but we invite you to continue connecting in Social Hour by visiting UUAA.org/social hour. This is a wonderful way to get to know each other more deeply through guided small group conversations. If you are new to our community and want to learn more about us, you can also let the Social Hour host know so that they can invite you to a special newcomer welcome room. We also have an additional special Social Hour room where YRUU has prepared for you an online quiz called a Kahoot that you can join and discover what divides us and what unites us. Let the Social Hour host know if you would like to join the Kahoot room. The work of understanding, the work of unlearning and re-evaluating, the work of communicating and creating common ground is critical to creating a beloved community where speaking and listening are prioritized each in their own time. The work of this community is sustained by the generosity of you all, by giving gifts of your time, energy, money, or your listening ear. If you would like to make a financial gift, you can visit uuaa.org/giving, or you can mail a check if that's easier too. I also want to thank our YRUU members for their work on this service, whether they were on or off the screen. Without the many conversations in community and the contributions of each member bringing their voice to the group, we would be lessened. Thanks to each of you for your time, your effort, and your work. At the end of each YRUU meeting, we sing a song together. This year, when our meetings are digital, we always attempt to sing it in unison, and the unsynchronized nature of the Zoom platform creates, I can only call it, a glorious cacophony of voices. For this service, we decided to streamline it somewhat. If you know the song, feel free to sing along or even dance if the spirit moves. Thank you for listening to our voices today.
We are going on a journey to nowhere.
Taking it easy, taking it slow.
No more worries, no more hurries.
Nothing to carry, let it all go.
Woo!